Welcome back YouTubers to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. If you're new to my channel, I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness and sharing my life stories with you all in regards to my Aspergers Syndrome and my mental health versus everything else that comes in the territory with Aspergers Syndrome. It has been put to my attention at this point of time that I have been thinking about taking a break from the Autism series, and hopefully that I'll get back into it, as well as some other topics that I have clearly promised, so don't fret, they'll be there sometime soon. But in the meantime, I'm thinking about getting into more depth about neurodiversity, even though I have already shared some parts of neurodiversity, but I thought maybe to add some more to the playlist right now after following a guy called Jason Speaks, which I'll link his channel to the description below, which I'll thank him for sharing this topic because he strongly is into neurodiversity, and you can see why too he's into it as well, because obviously from what I shared with you all together autism, when I introduced him about him, he's all about, you know, a mental advocate and all about change, and he loves the topic about neurodiversity. So this one's obviously going to be part 2 or part 1 of the series of the neurodiversity, which will come into more depth from the very introductory about it all, about what I shared in the piece. But I'll link the playlist also into the description so you guys can tag along if you're into these series as well, or you just want to see what I'm talking about, or even hopefully maybe somewhere along the way I might put an iCard for you guys to follow through to understand, or just have it there ready for you to, you know, just stop this video and maybe play some of those at least, so that you can get a full grips of it. So as you know, basically there has been some new paradigms or just some new form of words and whatnot that often requires a bit of language and attention, and many of times though with this case of the paradigm neurodiversity, even this word that has been used a lot in itself is still relatively new basically, and has been misunderstood many times by a lot of people. And in this day and age, I feel that we tend to not just misunderstand it, but tend to misuse the word neurodiversity, as well as many other everyday words and phrases that comes through, because as I said before, that, you know, neurodiversity, or one of the words I used of the zero tolerance was a catchphrase in the 80s basically, but in this word in itself, basically neurodiversity is new, dating way back somewhere in the late 90s. I have seen and witnessed so many people, regardless of walks of life, whoever they are, be it journalists, ourselves like bloggers or vloggers or whatnot, internet commentators and whatever else, you know, or even people who do identify themselves as neurodiversity activists or what have you, that stands up for their rights and whatnot, tend to get confused or even misunderstand about the terminology that is used around the term neurodiversity. Sometimes also in this day and age of the incorrect usage of certain terms that has been used often results in poor and clumsy communication of their message, of how they're trying to get their message across, so to speak, and how that message gets across then gets misled into a world of pain and misunderstanding and a bit of disagreement to their peers or someone else that may not agree to a certain higher point of it, hearsay we could say. And also in the way of this propagation of further confusion that will include other confused people, like imitating their errors by, you know, misunderstanding it all. But at the very least, increased use of certain terminology that has been used can make a writer or speaker appear so ignorant or even unreliable source of information that you trust and look up to, whoever it may be, you know, in the eyes of those who understand the meanings of these terms. For those of us who seek to propagate and build upon the neurodiversity paradigm, especially those of us who are producing writing on neurodiversity, it's vital that we maintain some basic clarity and understanding, as well as consistency of the language we use, for the sake of effective communication among ourselves and to our broader audience, regardless what it may be. The clarity and understanding of language supports the clarity, obviously, of understanding. Sometimes basically also a view of it. So neurodiversity means is the diversity of human brains and minds alike, the infinite variation of neurocognitive function within our own species. What it doesn't mean, however, is a biological fact. It's not a perspective, approach, a belief, a political position, or a paradigm. That's the neurodiversity paradigm, not neurodiversity itself. Neurodiversity is not a political or social activist movement. That's the neurodiversity movement, not neurodiversity itself, as I've already shared about a little bit about the neurodiversity movement. So therefore, basically, I suggest that if you haven't seen it already, to basically stop this video and see to it when hopefully I list some of the bits and pieces about what it's all about. Neurodiversity isn't a trait that any individual, however, do possess or come about. Diversity is a trait possessed by a group, not an individual. So it's a wide range of things. Yet, like I said, it can be a range of us within a way of different cultural, social, ethnic beliefs and values put into one. When an individual diverges from the dominant societal standards of normal neurocognitive function, they don't have neurodiversity. They are known as neurodivergent. Neurodiversity advocates promote support systems such as an inclusion-focused service, accommodations, communication and assertive technologies, occupational training and independent living support that will then allow those who are non-neurotypical to live their lives as they are rather than being coerced or forced to adopt uncritically accepted ideas of normality or to conform to a clinical idea of some form of state. Challenging these pervasive social norms and stigmas, it frames autism, ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, bipolarity, and other neurotypes as a natural human variation rather than a pathology or disorder, and rejects the idea that neurological differences needs to be or can be cured, as they believe them to be authentic forms of human diversity, self-expression, and being. An example of a correct usage to bear in mind: our school offers multiple learning strategies to accommodate the neurodiversity of our student body. Examples of the incorrect usage, however: neurodiversity claims that this writer is actually trying to talk about either the neurodiversity paradigm or the neurodiversity movement. Neurodiversity as a biological characteristic of the species can't claim anything any more than any variations in the human skin pigmentation and claim something. Neurodiversity is a load of nonsense. Are you for sure? Are you certain? So what? Really? So you're saying human brains and minds don't differ from one another. There's an awful lot of scientific evidence, however, that shows quite plainly that there's considerable variation among our human brains. And if we all thought to be alike and act alike and whatnot, the world would be a different place indeed. The person who wrote this sentence was probably trying to object to the neurodiversity paradigm and all the positions of the neurodiversity movement, and has ended up sounding rather silly as a result of failing to distinguish between these things and the phenomenon of neurodiversity itself. Neurodiversity paradigm means as a specific perspective on neurodiversity, a perspective or approach that boils down to these fundamental principles. 1. Neurodiversity is a natural and valuable form of human diversity. 2. The idea that there's one normal or healthy type of the brain or mind, or one right style of neurocognitive thinking or functioning, is a cultural constructed fiction, no more valid and no more conducive to a healthy society or to the overall well-being of humanity than the idea that there's one normal or right ethnicity, gender, or culture. 3. The social dynamics that manifest in regard to neurodiversity are similar to the social dynamics that manifest in regard to other forms of human diversity. Example: diversity again into the ethnicity, gender, or culture. These dynamics include the dynamics of social power inequalities and other dynamic forces by which diversity then embraces and acts as a source of creative potential. What it doesn't mean, however, the neurodiversity paradigm provides a philosophical foundation for the activism of the neurodiversity movement, but no two are the same. For instance, there are people who are working on developing inclusive education strategies based on the neurodiversity paradigm, who don't identify as social justice activists or as part of the neurodiversity movement. The example of correct usage for this is those who have embraced the neurodiversity paradigm and who truly understands it don't use pathologic terms like disorder to describe minority neurological variants like autism or bipolarity. Neurodiversity movement, what it means. Means a social justice movement that seeks the civil rights based on equality, respect, and full social inclusion for the neurodivergent. This, however, doesn't mean it's not a single group or organisation that isn't run by a single group or active organisation that has no leader. Like most civil movements, the neurodiversity movement is made up of a great many individuals, some of them organised into groups of one sort or the other, be it autistic or some other form. These individuals and groups are quite diverse in their own viewpoints, goals, concerns, political positions, affiliations, methods of activism, and interpretations of the neurodiversity paradigm. The neurodiversity movement began with the Autism rights movement, and there's still a great deal of overlap between these two movements, however. But the neurodiversity movement and the Autism rights movement are not one and the same. The most significant distinction between the two of them is the neurodiversity movement seeks to be inclusive of all neurominorities, not just the autistics. Also, there has been some activists who advocate for the rights of autistics, but who can't rightly be considered part of the neurodiversity movement because they still consider autism to be a medical pathology or disorder, or even needing us to be fixed one way or another, a view that at odds with the neurodiversity paradigm. Neurodivergent, or ND, and neurodivergence means, sometimes abbreviated as ND, as I just clearly mentioned, having a brain that functions in ways that diverge significantly from the dominant social standards of normal. Neurodivergent is quite a broad term. Neurodivergence, the start of being neurodivergent, can be largely or entirely genetic and innate, or it can be largely or produced by brain-altering experiences, or some combination of the two. Autism and dyslexia are examples of innate forms of neurodivergence, which alterations in brain function caused by such things as trauma, long-term meditation practice, or heavy usage of psychedelic drugs are examples of forms of neurodivergence produced through experience. A person whose neurocognitive function diverges from dominant social norms in multiple ways. For a clear example here, a person who is autistic, dyslexic, and epileptic can be described as multiply neurodivergent. Some forms of innate or largely innate neurodivergence, like autism, are intrinsic and pervasive factors in an individual's psyche, personality, and fundamental way of relating to the world in a way to making their world fit. The neurodiversity paradigm rejects the pathologizing of such forms of neurodivergence, and the neurodiversity movement opposes attempts to get rid of them. Other forms of neurodivergence, like epilepsy or the effects of traumatic brain injuries, could be removed from an individual without erasing fundamental aspects of the individual's selfhood, in many cases which the individual will be happy to get rid of such forms of this. The neurodiversity paradigm doesn't reject the pathologizing of these forms of neurodivergence, and neurodiversity movement doesn't forever object to continual attempts to cure them, but most definitely objects to discriminate against people who has these disorders. Thus, however, the neurodivergence isn't intrinsically positive or negative, but desirable, although it also depends on what sort of neurodivergence one is talking about here, though. The terms neurodivergent and neurodivergent were coined by Hussein Sibley, a multiple neurodiversity activist. Examples of correct usage is: our school aims to be inclusive of students who are autistic, dyslexia, or otherwise neurodivergent. There are some types of neurodivergence that we're still seeking to accommodate. This Facebook group is for people who identify as both queer and ND. Neurotypical, or NT, what it means, as I said before, means having a style of neurocognitive function that falls within the dominant social standards of normal. Neurotypical can be used as either an adjective, he's neurotypical, or a noun, he's neurotypical. Neurotypical is the opposite of neurodivergent. Neurotypically is the condition from which neurodivergent people diverge. Neurotypical bears the same sort of relationship to neurodivergent that bears straight to queerhead, say. Neurotypical is not synonymous with non-autistic. Neurotypical is quite the opposite of neurodivergent, however. Autism is only one of many forms of neurodivergence, so there are many people who are neither neurotypical nor autistic. Using neurotypical to mean non-autistic is like using white to mean not black. Also, neurotypical isn't a derogatory word and has no intrinsic negative connotation. Of course, sometimes people use the word in the context of criticizing the behavior of neurotypicals, but that doesn't make it any interestingly negative word. A lot of people criticize the behavior of men too, but that doesn't make it an interestingly derogatory word. Examples of the correct use: if the primary language of the society in which you were born is well suited to the purpose of describing your sensory experiences, your needs, and your thought processes, you may have neurotypical privilege. My sister is NT, but after growing up with an autistic father and brother, she's quite at ease with people's neurodivergent. Example of incorrect usage: is your daughter autistic or neurotypical? This is a well-worded question, but because there are other possibilities. The daughter in question might be non-autistic, but might also not quality as neurotypical. She might, for instance, be dyslexic or bipolar. Neurominority is defined as a population of neurodivergent people about whom all the following are true. 1. They all share a similar form of neurodivergence. The form of neurodivergence they share is one of those forms that is largely innate and able to be inseparable from who they are, constituting an intrinsic and pervasive factor in their psyches, personalities, and fundamental ways of relating to the world. 3. The form of neurodivergence they share is one of many which the neurotypical majority tends to respond with some degree of prejudice, misunderstanding, discrimination, and/or oppression, often facilitated by classifying that form of neurodivergence as a medical pathology. Some examples of this groups may include autistic, bipolar, dyslexics, and schizophrenic people. The word neurominority can function as a noun. Autistics are a minority or an adjective. Neurodiverse. What does this mean? This means a group of people is neurodiverse if one or more members of the group differ substantially from other members in terms of their neurocognitive functioning. Or to phrase it another way, a neurodiverse group is a group in which multiple neurocognitive styles are represented. Thus, a family, the faculty or student body of school, the population of a town, or the cast of characters of a TV show would be neurodiverse if some members had different neurocognitive styles from other members. For instance, if some members were neurotypical while others were autistic. What it doesn't mean, however, many people mistakenly use neurodiverse where the correct word would be neurodivergent. Of all the too many areas that has been used, people making, writing, and speaking about neurodiversity, the incorrect use of neurodiverse to mean neurodivergent is far the most common. There's no such thing as neurodiverse individual. The correct term is neurodivergent individual. An individual can diverge, but an individual cannot be diverse. Diversity is a property of groups, not individuals. The intrinsic of the meaning to the meaning and proper usage of this term diverse. Groups of diverse individuals diverge. In addition, neurodiverse doesn't mean neurotypical. The opposite of neurotypical is neurodivergent, not neurodiverse. The opposite of neurodiverse would be neurohomogeneous, meaning composed of people who are neurocognitively similar to one another. Neurodiverse cannot be used to mean non-neurotypical because neurotypical people, like any other human beings, are part of the spectrum of human neurodiversity. To use the term racially diverse to mean non-white or to describe a black or an Asian American person, for instance, as a racially diverse individual would not merely be an incorrect use of word diverse, it would also be racist. It would be racist because it would imply that white people somehow occupy a special, unique position separate from the overall diversity of humanity. There's us white people, and then there are all those diverse people. Such usage can change the definition of the word diverse to mean not part of the privileged in the group. Again, that's not what the word means, and misusing in that particular way serves to reinforce a racist mindset in which white people are seen as intrinsically separate from the rest of humanity, rather than as just another part of the spectrum of human diversity. Well, this quickly ends a little bit of the basic terms and definitions that I want to share with you all. I'll link from the article from what I was reading from, just to give you a clearer understanding. So I hope that this list of definitions will help you to foster and understand a bit more clarity and more accurate writing when it comes down to these terminologies that is based around neurodiversity. So give me like 5 thumbs up support, comment below if I missed out anything, or feel free to comment below about neurodiversity, how you feel about it, and bring out some topics open for discussion, be it whatever it is, maybe on one of the words I used, maybe if you agree to disagree or agree to disagree, or vice versa. So don't forget to do, guys, follow me on my social media sites, feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so, and while you're there on the bottom right hand screen, maybe there should be a little notification bell so that you can be up to date. So don't forget to do, guys, share these videos around. Also, do what you love what you do. Until next time, Aspie signing out.